Assalamu alaikum again to everyone who has dialed in from Kashmir or outside Kashmir. A very warm welcome to you on behalf of Kashmir Care Foundation. For those of you who may not understand Kashmiri or Urdu, we're going to switch from Kashmiri to Urdu from time to time. But the message will not be lost on you, but most of the conversation will have in English. As people dial in and keep dialing in, we're going to share with you important messages. This session is KCF celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Ali Jan. This session is named after him. And we're so glad that some of the family members of the Ali Jan Fazli family are with us today. So Amir, with that, over to you for the first video that Amir has put together. Please, Amir, over to you.
Dr. Ali Muhammad Fazli, popularly known as Dr. Ali Jan, was born on 3rd of September 1914 in Gujwara, Srinagar. His life is a shining example of dedication, intellect, and compassion. From humble beginnings, he rose to become an extraordinary physician, revered as much for his clinical expertise as for his boundless empathy. Dr. Ali Jan completed his early education at the Islamia High School and SP College in Srinagar before pursuing his MBBS at the prestigious King Edward Medical College, Lahore in 1937. He excelled in his studies, earning the esteemed Nelson Rambir Singh Gold Medal as the most distinguished graduate of 1937. Later, in 1950, he furthered his qualifications by achieving his MRCP from Edinburgh and DCH from London, ultimately being elected as Fellow of the Royal College of Edinburgh in 1982. Dr. Ali Jan's early career saw him take on the monumental task of eradicating venereal diseases in the remote and hilly regions of Jammu province. His tireless efforts extended to Baramulla, Anantnag, Gulmarg, and Srinagar, where he served in pivotal roles, including District Medical Officer, State Tuberculosis Officer, and Superintendent of the Chest Diseases Hospital. Dr. Ali Jan was instrumental in introducing pediatric care to SMHS Hospital and played a pivotal role in establishing the medical college in Srinagar. His visionary work was further realized in the creation of the Sher-e-Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences. His diagnoses were often so precise that they eliminated the need for expensive diagnostic tests, an extraordinary skill that earned him the trust and admiration of his patients. Yet, it was not just his clinical acumen that endeared him to the people. It was his humility, his genuine empathy, and his ability to see beyond the physical ailment to understand the emotional and economic realities of those under his care. His patients saw in him not just a doctor, but a confidant, a counselor, and a source of hope. For the many doctors he mentored, he was an unparalleled teacher, a guiding light whose caliber and wisdom remain unmatched. Even decades later, his colleagues speak of him with reverence, acknowledging the profound influence he had on their lives and careers. In 1975, he was awarded the civilian honor of Padma Shri by the President of India for his extraordinary contributions to healthcare and medical education in Jammu and Kashmir. He was also a fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences India and a member of the Medical Council of India, roles that underscored his stature in the medical community of the country. Beyond medicine, Dr. Ali Jan was a man of culture and refinement, an ardent lover of poetry and music. He found joy in the verses of Mirza Ghalib, Allama Iqbal, Ghulam Ahmad Mahjoor, and Rasul Mir, and the melodious voices of Tibat Baqal and Raj Begum. His favorite pastime was fishing, which took him to the tranquil waters of the valley, reflecting his connection with nature. Dr. Ali Jan's life was a harmonious blend of intellect, compassion, and service. He was not only a beacon of hope for the ailing, but also a source of inspiration for generations of medical professionals. For his family and community, he was a pillar of strength, a guide in times of uncertainty, and a source of immense pride. He was and remains Luqman-e-Kashmir, a healer of body and soul, a mentor to many, and an icon of humility and wisdom. Today, the Kashmir Care Foundation pays tribute to the legendary Lukman-e-Kashmir, Dr. Ali Jan, a beacon of excellence in medicine, education, and the well-being of countless individuals. Guided by our motto, humanity always, education first, the Kashmir Care Foundation aspires to uphold the values that Dr. Ali Jan embodied. Through our efforts to guide and mentor the next generation of global Kashmiris, we aim to contribute to what was most dear to him, education and the service of humanity. Dr. Ali Jan's legacy continues to inspire us, and it's with great reverence we salute his unparalleled dedication to humanity and his lifelong commitment to the betterment of others.
Thank you, Amir, so much. And thanks also to the Fazli family for providing the pictures, and to KEI in Kashmir for providing some of the pictures, and to Khuru Saab for providing some of the narrative that was used by Amir Saab. We're going to now show you another short video of three tremendous human beings who we admire in the US. Zohar Saab, over to you, please.
Legendary Dr. Ali Jan was my hero, my mentor, and my role model. From the pony rides in the far-flung areas of Doda, where he would visit his patients as a budding young physician, to the opulence and splendor of the Western world, he had seen it all. He was a magician, Lukman of our times, an inspirational diagnostician, and a magical physician, and a visionary who was instrumental in establishing the Medical Institute as well as the Rotary Club in Srinagar. I fondly remember his rounds in Ward 3, as well as my monthly evening tea with him at his house in Magarmal Bagh, along with his son and daughter, Amina and Ahmed. I was fortunate to have tended to him during his last days in Buffalo, New York, where he passed away in peace in October 1988. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him in Jannah. Ameen.
Ameen.
Dr. Jan Saab was my mentor, my guide, and my godfather. Apart from his astute clinical sense, he was known for his honesty and integrity, and he tried to inculcate these in his juniors who were working with him. He was a man of few words, but amongst the friends, he would steal the show. He tried his best, along with his friends, days and nights together, to establish an institute of medical sciences in Srinagar, and he was successful in establishing Sher Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, which in my opinion is the greatest legacy he left for people of Kashmir. May God bless his soul. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum. I had the privilege of being a student with Dr. Ali Jan at SMHS and made ward rounds with him. Those moments were precious, to see a great diagnostician and a clinician examine the patient, take a detailed history, and many times make a diagnosis at the bedside. We were in awe of the skills of Dr. Ali Jan, and he left a great mark on all of us and was a role model for us. May he rest in peace.
Thank you so much, Zohar Saab. Ahmed, I'm going to now go to you. If you could please, on behalf of the family, first, our deepest gratitude to the Fazli families for what you have done, for what your dad has done. But if you can make a few comments, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. I have really no words to express my thanks and gratitude to the Kashmir Care Foundation, to you, Dr. Lal, on behalf of our immediate family, including the families of my late brothers, my sisters, and their children, and the extended Fazli family. I want to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Dr. Khan, Dr. Lakaban, Dr. Qazi, who are legends in their own right, and also to the physicians who are on the panel tonight. I'm just humbled by that more than 30 years have passed since Papa passed away, and people still remember him with great affection and respect. That in itself is such an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. People like Dr. Ali Jan live forever. That's what we're celebrating him today, and we'll keep on celebrating. Yunus, I've always remembered your face, and I think ये बंदा किसकी शक्ल से किससे मिलती है? Then I now know who you resemble. Thank you so much for dialing in today. It's remarkable, Yunus.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you for the reverence that you've shown my grandfather. And as Mamu mentioned, very rightly so, our family is very grateful, for the respect that has been accorded to him. We also thank all these legends. Dr. Ali Jan was a legend and a teacher for the generation prior to us. But people like Dr. Qazi, Dr. Farooq Khan, Dr. Alagban, have been, legends, for us. And, we've tried to emulate, their learnings in so many different ways. I can't say enough, about these great people, who have actually been path breakers, for all of us and have shown us, and mentored us in so many different ways. So thank you again. The family is eternally grateful to everyone, who's accorded him the respect, and especially to you, Dr. Lal, for bringing everybody together. Sincerely appreciate it.
We're going to formally start the session today. So welcome again, those of you who dialed in after the videos, but you will see all of this on our website or immediately on the website of Kashmir Life, the local newspaper. Let me now formally introduce our panelists today, Dr. Khuru Saab, Hamid Zargar Saab, Upender Saab, Parvez, Javed, Nargis. They don't need any introduction because I've talked to them. There are long videos on our website, on our Facebook. Please go there. These are remarkable conversations. Each one of that conversation can end up into a book in itself. With that, I want to welcome all of you again. You would notice that 5 of the 6 panelists are from SKIMS, and 3 of the 5 are former directors of SKIMS. So again, the legacy Dr. Ali Jan left, he created the infrastructure. And when I spoke with Hamid Zargar Saab, I spoke with Parvez or Nargis or Javed Saab and Upender, they all said Khuru Saab. They looked up to Khuru Saab, what Khuru Saab did, and we'll come to that in a minute. So to those medical students or young professionals who have dialed in today, listen to the wise words that are going to come out of these people. Use them as your guiding forces as you think about your career and advance your career. So with those introductions, Khuru Saab, I'm going to go to you first.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam. The studies you conducted from November 1978 to April 1979 on waterborne hepatitis in Srinagar, they revealed that the agent was a non-Hep A, Hep B. And subsequent studies that you did led to identification of a novel type of hepatitis virus. In 2 to 3 minutes, and I'm going to hold everyone to 2 to 3 minutes, walk us through that piece, please, again.
Dr. Altaf, thank you very much for inviting me into this session, and very important inspiration for young people, and also asking a historical question, which has been written up by me in several reviews at 30 years and last at 44 years. The issue was I was trained in an era, what was called the golden age of hepatitis. The 4 viruses which had been either identified or recognized. But there was one problem in India. There was an enigma of viral hepatitis with pregnancy. And whenever anybody from India published data, the West brushed it away as hospital-based data, which had no significance, and nobody agreed to us from the West. And that is the time I came back from PGI to Kashmir, having an epidemic of hepatitis in Tangmarg, Baramulla area, with 55,000 cases of viral hepatitis and 1,700 deaths in a period of 9 weeks. And I was in it. So I thought this is the right way to do an house-to-house survey, not the hospital-based survey. But when I went there, everybody said, you're crazy, you'll die, because everybody is dying there, and nobody joined me. So I had to really bring 500 local volunteers to make them as health visitors to do the study. So it was me and those 500 people. And also we did a extensive and comprehensive house-to-house study for visits to each and every house of these 200 villages with 600,000 people, and found some data which were unprecedented. The data were so unprecedented that it was unbelievable that the disease was waterborne because of a fecally contaminated water, no problem. Adults were involved, not young people, and should have been young people didn't get involved. Adults were involved. Pregnant women got disease 9 times more, and they died 20 times more than a control group, which we had, non-pregnant women and men. And markers of hepatitis A and E were negative. So based on these data, I looked at them very carefully. We showed that this is an epidemic non-A, non-B hepatitis. So this is epidemic non-A, non-B, and this shows very peculiar clinical and epidemiological features. So we knew the disease completely new, not recognized earlier. And the states, we published 2 papers in American Journal of Medicine, 2 in Lancet, 1 in American Journal of Epidemiology. And I went all over the world, sort of on shopping and telling this is a completely new disease which has not been identified, became an epoch-making event. And that's where the disease started. And the last 44 years identified it as an hepatitis C virus. So I think it's all written up in several articles. If anybody wants to read it, I'll be very happy to send him PDFs of those articles.
थैंक यू खुरू साहब, वो सारे जो पर्चे आपने वो हमारी वेबसाइट पे पहले आ गए हैं. I would direct everyone to go to that website, please, kashmircarefoundation.org. You will see tremendous documentation from Khuru Saab. Dr. Hamid Zargar Saab, I'm going to come to you now. When we spoke last, you described your work on iodine deficiency, the work that got you thinking about this work at PGI and then at AIMS. In short 2-3 minutes, share with everyone what prompted you to do that work and how you made us all intelligent today.
Altaf Saab, when I was doing my DM at PGI, I went on a sabbatical for 3 months to All Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. And incidentally, during those 3 months, there was a meeting organized by World Health Organization for researchers in the field of iodine, thyroxine, and brain development. There were about 24 global researchers who had worked on iodine deficiency, its impact on human mind, body, reproductive system, and societies in general. This meeting lasted for about a week, and the results of this came as Delhi Declaration in Lancet, June 1984. It was in Feb 1984 this meeting happened. 3 things that came out of this were: 1, wherever there is iodine deficiency, it influences the whole community. It is not a disease of an individual. You might see a goiter in an individual, but disease in the community. 2, that iodine deficiency can be contained. You need to be perpetually at it. And 3rd, and the most important thing, Globally, the commonest cause of mental retardation, mental inadequacy is iodine deficiency. And I found many of those researchers so desperate why people are not understanding it. I still remember late Dr. John Stanbury, who was a professor emeritus from Harvard, who had actually identified iodine in thyroid in 1953. That why people are not understanding. I remember an episode, Professor Curaido, a professor of endocrinology from Hague, delivering a lecture talking about iodine deficiency and telling the chairman, who happened to be the then Minister of Science and Technology, Mr. Minister, it is a shame that cretins continue to be born in India when I have informed you 2 decades earlier. So the point was, I had already rubbed shoulders with a guy like Professor Kuru. I was his postgraduate. I had seen his enthusiasm of working, community intervention. So, yes, one single thing that can be done is overall, not only that you take care of hypothyroidism, thyrotoxicosis, but by one single intervention can influence the IQ of a total community for all times to come. So we quantified the magnitude of iodine deficiency here, the way Kuru Sahib had quantified hepatitis, non-A, non-B hepatitis. We put measures in place to eradicate it, and 3 decades down the line, we requantified it, found out that probably we have achieved one of the best successes in the Asian subcontinent in eradicating iodine deficiency. Over to Altaf.
And those who want to read those papers, go to Kashmir Care Foundation website.
And one addendum to it, you know what, I was listening to Dr. Kuru's that brief note you had with him. During this travel, you know, as Kuru Sahib said about hepatitis, many things do happen. Like during this travel, we realized autoimmune disease of the thyroid makes its appearance 2 decades earlier because our thyroid is already truncated.
Yeah.
We realized that so-called multinodular goiter has never been multinodular goiter. It is Graves' disease because all of us are multinodular goiters already because of iodine deficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
We realized that postpartum thyroid disease, which is a unique phenomenon globally, is modulated by iodine deficiency, has totally different patterns here. So we put mechanism in place for education. Over.
Thank you so much. And this is what local knowledge means, that the title of this conversation we have. And for those of you who have questions, please post them. We have some questions already received through emails, but please post your question on the chat box and we'll come to those questions. Upender, over to you now, sir. When we spoke last, you shared the observations that you published in your NAGM paper. मैं ये इसलिए भी कह रहा हूँ कि हमारे जो panelists हैं, they have published in some of the most high impact journals. Lancet, NAGM, New England, amazing publications. So that paper led to a choice of drug-eluting stents for treatment of patients with diabetes and chronic artery disease. That was amazing piece of work that benefited patients globally. Could you walk us through again in 2 to 3 minutes, please?
Thank you once again for organizing this very educative program. And see, I have been associated with coronary angioplasty since 1981. And the basic idea was nobody wanted bypass surgery if we could replace it with a non-surgical procedure. But in the beginning, it had a very difficult time because balloon angioplasty would fail, could not open multiple vessels, and the same day problems could occur because of trauma to the artery. So came in coronary stents, metal meshes to be placed in the blocked arteries. And that acute problem got sorted out, but came a new disease called in-stent restenosis, that excessive healing in the stent and recurrence of the block, not acutely, but within 3 months, 6 months it used to come, and much more, malignantly in diabetes. So then in 2002 came an era of drug-eluting stents, that is, coat these stents with certain drugs, which would reduce cell growth, would reduce inflammation, and may kill some of the cells so that the stent does not get rechoked. And then came two drugs which became popular. One was sirolimus and its analogs, and the other was paclitaxel. Both of these agents have been used by, after transplant surgeries to prevent, rejections and also in certain cancers. So both these drugs became quite popular, but everolimus or limus stents shown to be better than the paclitaxel agent, except in diabetics, where it was sort of small studies had shown they're equivalent and maybe better. So that led to a bitter controversy and a debate internationally. And then I thought that, India being the capital of diabetes, we should be the first to do a study to see where are we. So we planned a study called Tuxedo Study, and 46 Indian centers. First Indian study in which all the investigators from India and compared these two stents in about 1,850 patients randomized, and finally found that not only was paclitaxel not inferior, but it was, leading to problems like stent thrombosis, closure of vessels, deaths. So with that publication, the paclitaxel-eluting stents went out of market, and that was, I think, one of the very important contributions by my group, and which was acknowledged in many, late-breaking trials and, lecturing in US and led to many publications. So that was one of the very important things. But we had challenges in that. Carrying out a study, Kurusa would agree with me, or Zargasa would agree. Carrying a study of 1,850 patients who have to undergo angioplasty in different parts of the country, they would do it. Collecting the data is a big problem. Keeping those tents of all sizes in the hospitals was a problem. And then during that period, the rules of the drug controller DCGI changed, and you had to have audio-visual, consenting process. All that happened, and then to top it all, the study was sponsored by Boston Scientific Company, to which paclitaxel-eluting stent belonged to, and I destroyed their stent. So these were all the challenges which had, but it was a
Thank you.
gratifying experience, and that has
Thank,
led to further studies and continuing
thank
this
you.
process.
Thank you. And please read Dr. Upender Kaul's papers that he just mentioned, remarkable publications, very high impact publications. From one call to another call, Parvez, over to you now. I've followed your work, I guess, the most. That's perhaps because we may be of the same age group. Or maybe we rubbed shoulders while I was serving in Delhi. Your work on influenza has impressed all of us. I think because of the work you and your group has done, we administer vaccines in Kashmir differently than from the rest of the country. Northern hemisphere versus southern hemisphere. Could you, for those who are now wanting to get into the pulmonology science, address those young physicians? How did you think about that? Kashmir में vaccine badal time asti.
Thank you so much, KCF, for having me as a part of this program and sharing space with the people I admire most, like Dr. Kuru, Dr. Hamid, Professor Kaul, and youngsters like Nargis and Dr. Javed. Coming to influenza, for a long time, people did not believe that influenza ever occurred in India, despite the fact that historical data showed that in the 1918 infamous pandemic, there was one country which was most affected, and that was India. 15 million people dying over a period of one single year. And that is the only time that India has registered a negative population growth. That's one. And the studies on influenza were limited to few studies of outbreaks till 2004, when there was a collaboration between the CDC of the US and the Indian Council of Medical Research to do a strain surveillance of influenza across the country. And 7 regional centers were set up with National Institute of Virology as their coordinating center. So there was a workshop in Delhi in 2009-10, just after the pandemic influenza. And I happened to visit there and met your better half, Dr. Rainu. And I told her that we in top north of Kashmir also have a similar pattern of illnesses, especially during winters. We get a lot of respiratory infections, but we don't know what it is caused by. So she got me in contact with the All India Institute of Medical Sciences people, and they told me that you sent samples, and thanks to Nargis, Feroz, and then there was Dr. Omar Hafiz, they collected samples and we shipped them to All India Institute of Medical Sciences and documented that influenza was indeed present in these patients and it was contributing to acute respiratory illnesses, be it in the OPD or in the hospitalized patients. And then we did, and because of that work, we were included in the network. And then in the period of 2010 to 2015, we were fortunate to do more work than all the centers put together. And we generated more data than that. And based on the patterns of seasonality in Kashmir and in the rest of the country, we demonstrate that we behave differently than the rest of the country. India, as such, is a northern hemispherical country. So traditionally, people will be given a northern hemispherical vaccine. But we demonstrated that it was not so. In Kashmir, it is right. And in the rest of India, it is not right, except for a few odd spots in deep south. And we said that something, what we call as the equator, for influenza needs to be shifted up. It has to be 30 degrees north latitude. And that is what we have named as the influenza equator. And that was published last year in the Lancet. And that is how we demonstrated on the basis of surveillance across the country that rest of the country needs to follow the southern hemispherical vaccine, whereas we need to have the northern hemispherical vaccine.
Thank you so much. One of the things you will hear people talk, the panelists talk, is collaboration, the networking, and we'll come to that. So for those who are young and emerging scholars, keep that in mind. Clinical research, academic research is a partnership where you establish with different individuals. They may be in Kashmir or outside Kashmir. Javed Saab, मैं आपके पास आना चाह रहा हूँ अब. Javed Saab is in Devangiri, mashallah, in Karnataka. When we spoke last, we talked about food habits in Kashmir in that we largely consumed polished rice, and that is deficient in thiamine. And your studies have found acute infantile encephalopathy in breastfed infants in Kashmir. Ordinarily, we wouldn't think that is a big deal, but it is a big deal. So could you talk about it a little bit, please?
At outset, I thank Asia for inviting me, and I'm delighted to share space with stalwarts of medicine. So to cut long story short, we used to see very many enigmatic infantile deaths in our Kashmir, and we could not find etiology. So, but patients would have typical phenotype of pulmonary hypertension, sudden encephalopathy, and acidosis. Again, briefly, we got lead from Professor Parvez School. Somehow, that's a long story. So we got lead about thiamine deficiency from Professor Kohl Saab, our director, ex-director. So we worked on it. We did preliminary study. Then we indeed found from our preliminary study that this is actually severe thiamine deficiency in these infants, and this is completely treatable disease. And the impact was when we gave them thiamine, these patients used to come in severe crisis. Then when we gave them thiamine, and they would be absolutely all right within half an hour. So this we publish it, and then we could find basically because Kashmir has largely rice-eating population, and we have a lot of dietary taboos during our pregnancy and postpartum, where mothers are given only soup and rice, and that this would make them susceptible for this deficiency. Not only that, I think not only children, then work has been conducted. Dr. Sobia from GMC Sarnagar, she has conducted work on adults, and she also found that huge thiamine deficiency among Kashmiri population because of epidemiological reasons. So we wrote to ICMR and we got the project for pediatric population. It is a community-based study. We indeed found, and we are this week we are submitting a report to ICMR. We found that indeed our population is very much vulnerable to thiamine deficiency. Not only children, the adult team, they are also have shown same results. So this will open a new chapter where, if these health education is given to these common people, this can be eradicated.
Thank you, Javed Sir, very much. Nargis, I'm going to come over to you now. And I kept the best question for you, by the way. You do things that are different than what other panelists do. You look behind the scene to make them look good, if I could say that. What I find most intriguing aspect of microbiology today is studies of microbiome. Could you talk to the audience, especially to the young scholars who are wanting a career in microbiology? Over to you, Nargis.
Good morning, everyone. It's indeed overwhelming to share the screen with all my teachers and mentors. So you specifically asked me about the microbiome. So the term actually refers to the collective community of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microbes that colonize a particular space or ecosystem like water, soil, air, etc. And usually in these ecosystems, these organisms, they are codependent, they adapt to and they take advantage of the conditions that are presented by the host. The human microbiome can actually be defined as a set of organisms that inhabit and interact with the human body. And such an interaction can either be mutualistic, it can be commensalistic, or pathogenic. The human microbiome, even though the human body has several distinct microbiomes, like you have the microbiome of the skin, you have microbiome of the mucous membranes, oral cavity, airways, genitourinary tract. But the largest concentration of these microorganisms, or the consortium of these microorganisms, is actually in the gut. And recent research has proved beyond doubt that a healthy microbiome is very important and is very vital for the sustenance of health and life. And any change in the makeup of the microbiome can lead to a wide array of life-threatening illnesses like cancers, hepatobiliary cancers, gastric cancers. We have inflammatory bowel disease, allergic disorders, cardiovascular disorders, even Alzheimer's, rheumatoid arthritis, stroke, and even mental health issues like anxiety and depression. So an in-depth knowledge into the indigenous microbiota of human beings can actually pave way for combating these diseases. And I think it's the need of the hour. It cannot be overemphasized, more so that, especially that we are in this era of antimicrobial resistance.
Nargis, thank you so much. I'm going to break for some questions from the audience. Kurusab, there's a question that I think you can answer. The question is from Vijay. Does water contamination attribute to non-alcoholic fatty liver, which is so prevalent now? Does the water contamination contribute to fatty liver?
Thank you very much, Dr. Altaf, for asking the question. Fatty liver disease is so common, actually, around 1/3 or even maybe half, or some people say even 2/3 of diabetics have fatty liver disease in Kashmir, as well as in India. And there are so many defined and undefined etiologies. Now, water contamination could be a potential cause because we use so much contaminated water, although there are no definite epidemiological or control studies on it. But there's no doubt that it should be worked up, because if you have so much contaminates in water, which includes metals, toxins, or any other items, toxic elements, it could cause liver injury and could possibly cause fatty liver based on what toxins and metals we're eating. But I personally feel as of today, we need to have more work on it and do some more studies. And I think the people who are listening to us, or even anybody, could start this project. I'm sure they'll find something, probably a gold in this mine.
Thank you so much. I think one thing common you will see in these panelists and others who do academic research, and I have Khalid from Harvard dialing in, who's going to be chairing our next session. You set with hypotheses. You ask a question, and you figure out how to answer that. It may not be answerable in the first attempt, but you keep on working on it, you get an answer. I have a question now that came on my info at email, which was, I think, directed Zargar Saab, to you, it is about partnerships. I briefly alluded to that. The question wants to know, how was partnership helpful to you in defining your career and your journey in academic medicine? 2 minutes, please.
Simple. If we look at just the example of iodine deficiency, when I conceived of conducting an epidemiological program on it, we needed to estimate iodine. I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know it. I'm not a biochemist. So I went to All Institute of Medical Sciences, where Professor Karmarkar had established an assay which was globally being used for iodine estimation recommended by WHO. There, they refused to do our sample evaluation. They said that we will train you guys. So I sent a consultant from biochemistry to learn the methodology. The chief of endocrinology at AIMS said, I will myself de-iodinate the vials because otherwise you will have a contaminated sample. I didn't know how to de-iodinate them. He labeled them. With the same bottles, we sent our own people to collect the samples and then established the lab in our own biochemistry. So our own department, the All Institute of Medical Sciences, then biochemistry department. This might look 2 minutes, but this whole process took 5 years and going through 220 villages during some of the most difficult time of in the history of Jammu and Kashmir, and evaluating 11,000 children. I could not have done it alone.
Understood. So the guidance is that academic research is a partnership with your peers and partnership with communities. I'm going to go back to the questions that I had received first. In reverse order, Nargis, I'm going to go to you first. And the question was, what are the most pressing infectious diseases we face in Jammu and Kashmir today? It's a two-part question. And what are the career opportunities in microbiology? And what skills are essential for becoming a microbiologist? And so it's too many questions in those two-part questions. If you can please do it in 2 minutes.
So as far as the most pressing infectious diseases in Jammu and Kashmir right now are concerned, I think first and foremost, I would say antimicrobial resistance, because even as WHO says, it's an ongoing pandemic. And the rate at which we are seeing multi-drug resistant and pan-drug resistant organisms, I think we might be running out of options to treat infections due to these agents. Other than these, the infections that we see on a day in and day out basis are those pertaining to the respiratory tract, like influenza, infections caused by SARS-CoV-2, RSV in children, waterborne diseases like acute diarrheal illnesses. We have bacillary dysentery, cholera, enteric fevers, and viral hepatitis, of course. And fever of unknown origins. I would also like to mention here that we are also on a constant lookout for vector-borne diseases like dengue, malaria, chikungunya, leishmania, Nipah, Zika, Japanese encephalitis. I mean, the Jammu province already is reporting cases of dengue, malaria, leishmania, and chikungunya. And the indigenous spread of these agents is not known in Kashmir, but given the kind of climate change we are witnessing and the increase in travel, we need to be prepared for any eventuality. I would also like to add that in recent years, we have also witnessed an upsurge in the vaccine preventable illnesses like measles and chickenpox. Now, that was one part of the question. As far as what are the career opportunities in microbiology is concerned, I mean, microbiology offers an immense scope for specialization. And based on the skill sets that you have, you can get employment in various research laboratories and government hospitals, teaching facilities. You can be enrolled like I was enrolled as a doctor in a government hospital. I do teaching as well and research as well. So microbiology is just, I think it's an exciting time for microbiology. And given the technology that we have at hand, sky's the limit for us. As far as the skills that are required to become a good microbiologist, I would say other than the undergrad, postgrad, and the doctoral degrees that we are required to have, we should be quite astute in the lab skill set. We should be good with computers, and a basic training, I think, in bioinformatics would be helpful because we have transcended from simple cultures and microscopy, and we have forayed into the dominion of genetic analysis of microbes. Other than these qualities, I think the generic qualities of being good at communication, having problem-solving attitude, and an analytical mind would also help. And if I may just add, I think a good microbiologist is supposed to have a lot of perseverance, because it's a basic science, it's ever evolving, it's very volatile, very challenging. So perseverance, I think, is one thing that a microbiologist should have.
Thank you so much. If I could add to what Nargis said, there's a pharmaceutical sector which is ideal for those individuals who are excel at microbiology. Javed Saab, over to you. I want to ask you a question that came to us. They want to know about status of cystic fibrosis in Kashmir. Could you take that question, please?
Apart from thiamine deficiency, my whole passion is in cystic fibrosis. I just want to learn this disease more and more and want to do research in this disease, especially in context to our population. Just two decades ago, when I was postgraduate, so there was common saying that this is the disease of Ashkenazi Jewish population. Then, because there was no sweat chloride testing available, then we brought our department brought sweat chloride equipment, and when we started doing it, we found amazingly it is not only prevalent here, it has very huge prevalence. Highest in the country. So we worked on it. We got the project from ICMR. It is running from last 5 years. We have our own cystic fibrosis clinic separate, where this time around 140 patients are enrolled. And they just is tip of the iceberg. And we did their full genetics, because this was ICMR sponsored project. We did their full genetics. We got to know what is our mutational profile of these patients, because we know it is an autosomal recessive disorder. And there are now some mutations where you have availability of medicine, though it is not available in India because of cost factor. But at least we got to know what is our genetic this. But the distressing part is still that we are not able these patients much, because the definitive treatment we are not able to offer, and we diagnose them late when their advanced disease has already set in. I'm writing another project. My aim would be to initiate a mechanism where we can capture these patients immediately after birth, so that they can have better prognosis. They can start their physiotherapy early on, they can treat infections early on, and they can have better quality of life. That's our next step. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Parvez, I'm going to come to you, and I'm getting, by the way, many questions, and I'll go to the chat box in a little while. परवेज ये बताएं, आपने कोई काम किया है जो आपने publish ना किया हो, because you just couldn't get around publishing it? Not that you're one of the prolific writers, but something that you did had an impact, saved lives, prevented deaths, but you didn't publish it. Could you share that, if this was Lancet for you?
I think, yes, I am reminded of a visit, and in fact, that will briefly put the work done by Dr. Javed and his colleagues into context. It was a time that we went to the pediatric hospital with the then principal and head of department, Dr. Kaisar, there. So I went to him that I want some pediatric samples, because pediatric samples were not very common in SCIMS. So I wanted to have some pediatric samples from Government Medical College, Srinagar's pediatric hospital. And Kaisar was there. They were discussing a case of a young child coming, infant, of course, come to them with severe acidosis and pulmonary hypertension. So they were discussing, and I happened to be there with Dr. Umar Hafiz. And while they were discussing it, Kaisar told me, we have this peculiar problem, bache aate hain, and then they suddenly deteriorate fast into a cardiac failure, pulmonary hypertension, severe acidosis, and then they die. And it was a recurrent phenomenon, not only seen in pediatric hospital, but also in other hospitals of the state. So I heard of a condition called Shoshin beriberi. Shoshin beriberi was similar to the presentation that these children had, and it was prevalent in Japan. And based on my knowledge of that, I told Kaisar, Dr. Kaisar, could you please treat these patients with thiamine? There is a possibility it could be beriberi, because the clinical syndrome seems to be resembling. And I did not have access, or they did not have access to doing thiamine levels that time. And he told me it is a very innocuous thing, giving thiamine. So they gave thiamine to these people, and after a couple of weeks, I got calls that all of these patients are getting better within few hours, and they survive. This is one contribution, I believe, of mine, of a 5-minute discussion with Dr. Kasser and the pediatricians there. And this subsequently translated into a movement kind of a thing. Javed took it, then some people from the medical college and some people from radiology. It was found that we use polished rice, and as a result of that, we have thiamine deficiency, which was documented subsequently. And it has saved countless lives, I would say. I mean, giving 5 years of life to a person who is 75 years of age or 65 years of age may not mean much, but giving a full 85-year age to an infant means a lot. And that, I think, is the greatest piece of conversation I've ever had in my life.
So Parvez, now you published it. So congratulations for that publication now.
Thank you, Casey.
Virtual. To those who are wanting to advance careers in academic medicine, conversations matter. Talking to each other's matters. And Khalid, I'll come to you. You have a question on Nargis. I'll come to that in the next round. Upender, you did a study to evaluate the status of uncontrolled hypertension, which was mostly found in rural population of J&K. Remarkable thing, आप दिल्ली में बैठे हैं मगर उपेंद्र, for those of you who don't know, इच्छुक मा कशीर वेंडस दो पाजु गसा जुमा दो वापस. That's his regular routine. Walk us through, Upender, of this hypertension in rural population of J&K.
We went to 6 districts of Kashmir and 2 districts of Jammu to find out about this problem. And we visited the health centers, people who were being treated for hypertension, people who are aware about hypertension. We're not talking about the, masses where many of them don't know that they have high blood pressure. They had been prescribed drugs, yet we found alarmingly high blood pressures in people who were already taking drugs. Some of them were not taking the full doses. And the problem was because they were not aware of the consequences of this high blood pressure. And that was one of the major issues. And we found 55% of the patients prescribed drugs not getting to not even closer to the levels which we recommend, at least 140 by 90. All the people say it should be 130 by 80. And we thought that, the reasons for that have to be, amplified. And for that, I think we need to have culturally sensitive educational material, people who have influence, engage the local people, involve the imams in the mosques to also talk about it at some point, that, and that everybody should be knowing his blood pressure. Most people in Kashmir who have hypertensive have BP instruments at home because at least one person has a high blood pressure there. So besides the drugs, we need to educate them. What are the items which can reduce the blood pressure? Like high potassium diet can reduce blood pressure, and it's very important because many of our traditional foods like ha contains a lot of potassium. So take a lot of green leafy vegetables, don't overcook them. Bananas, beans, lentil, fish, apricots, they all have high potassium, and high potassium is one of the very important, minerals to reduce blood pressure. So this has to be a multifactorial, targeting, but this is a major problem. We're talking of rural. We see patients in the cities also with, blood pressure very high, and they don't take high BP levels as much seriously as blood sugar levels. And controlling blood sugar is not as rewarding as controlling blood pressure if you go to the masses. To prevent strokes, to prevent heart attacks, much more than bringing the HbA1c to 7 and all that. Maybe Dr. Zargar would like to add.
Question is to Zargar Saab. Zargar Saab, आपने शारिक राशिद मसूदी के साथ prevalence diabetes पे काम किया था काफ़ी. And I must mention the present director of SKIMS is also a DM endocrinologist, Ganai Saab. another leader that we have in Kashmir. At the time you did the study with Masoodi Saab, there was a prevalence of diabetes and obesity of X. Has that X changed from then to now? And why is it changing if it has changed?
A comment on what Professor Cole said. It means we seem to have made people more aware about diabetes than Professor Coles have made people aware of hypertension. Dr. Lal, when I started my endocrinology, diabetes was not on the plate. Would be more thinking in terms of a pituitary tumor, growth hormone deficiency, hyperprolactinoma, hyperparathyroidism, thyroid disorders, infertility. This just happened along the road. When we first published our epidemiological study, the first staggering thing was that 6.8% of Kashmiri population had diabetes, and only 2.8 were aware they have diabetes. 4 were not. When we studied a younger population, we realized the epidemic that happened usually around 40th birthday has now started happening around 20th birthday only. The third thing that happened, when we did second and third epidemiological study, a new definition of pre-diabetes had come to the fore. And impaired fasting glycemia and impaired glucose tolerance. Now, globally, impaired glucose tolerance was the common pre-diabetes. The very first time we documented impaired fasting glycemia is the predominant pre-diabetes here, which when we published, we called it a disconnect between IFG and IGT in northern India. Now, what did it entail? 1, diabetes was increasing. 2, we had pre-diabetes, which was IGT. Predominant thought in the subcontinent was that we have insulin resistance predominantly. It is more than the Caucasian population, so our diabetes comes a decade earlier. Our studies 2.5 decades back showed a part of it is true, but it predominantly is not true. We're also fundamentally insulin deficient. So we are different from the Caucasian population. That's why our diabetes comes early, is more vigorous, is more dangerous. This was one. And with this epidemic, we found out obesity coming in. We documented first in adult population, 40 and above, then 20 and above, and then 5 and 15 years. Now, with this all work happening in 2.5 decades, in the last 1.5 decades, there is a global group known as Non-Communicable Diseases Collaboration Group, which is getting monitored from Harvard Medical School and Imperial College London. And we have been working together on these non-communicable diseases. When I was doing my post-graduation with Kuru Saab, documented data shows India had 1 crore diabetics. When I became a professor of endocrinology, India had 1.9 crore diabetics. When I left SICKIMS, India had 6.4 crore diabetics. When COVID set in, India had 7.7 crore diabetics. 2 years back, in-depth study was published, 10 crore diabetics. We collated data for the last 2 years, and this was published in Lancet last week. India, we have 22 crore diabetics.
Right. I saw
now,
that
it is
paper.
not only people are getting diabetes. This is escalating coronary artery disease and heart attacks.
Right.
This is escalating renal failure. We have documented here, apart from infections, the second commonest cause of mortality in Kashmir is renal failure in diabetics. 10 years data published in 1990, then prospective 10 years data published in 2009. Only, again, the part of the same study that came in Lancet last week, only 28% of people in this part of the world are getting proper treatment. So again, this entails how the lives of these millions and millions and millions, they're not going to live, they're not going to die. It's a state of a suspended poor quality life.
Right.
The diabetes that used to occur in my younger days, published data, at 48, life expectancy was 56. Today, the same diabetes occurring at 29, for that population, life expectancy would be 80. And imagine a guy from the age of 40 living for another 40 years with a possible renal dysfunction, a stunt, and bypass surgery. And that's what we are looking at. Is horrendous. It is going to immobilize the total mankind, particularly the Indian subcontinent. If situation is bad in India, it is much worse in our neighborhood. So Indian subcontinent, the whole gamut of infectious diseases killing people is now shifting to the non-communicable diseases. And we have two parallel mountains coming up in the subcontinent. That so we need a huge initiative and huge intuition how to handle it, not a single point management like eradicating iodine deficiency.
I fully understand, and therefore the need for more experts to come into this space and investigate the fine details of the phenomenon. Kurusab, now the question to you that has come is about hepatobiliary and pancreatic ascaris. That presented evidence, it was endemic in Kashmir and constituted about 13% of gallstone disease. I don't think many people knew about this. You published it, and I read those papers. Again, I'm going to ask you, eradicating something, Ali Jan Saab did deworming work a long time ago. You're hinting towards that. Could you please briefly talk to those who may want to start their careers on this field?
Dr. Lal, Kashmir is a unique place. And there are very striking things which are there, which we don't observe. And we had one professor, S.L. Verma, who said every Kashmiri has all diseases from cold to cancer are caused by ascaris, and he would deworm everybody. But that was when I was a medical student. When I went to institute in 1983, there were young people who'd come with abdominal pain, and they had mostly women, and we didn't know what was going on, and majority of them were sent to the psychiatrist by the treating physicians. And there was few of them who were in my ward 3, and they had such a severe abdominal pain and had come from a psychiatrist. They wanted to throw themselves out from the 3rd floor because the pain was so intensive. So we understood what was going on. We didn't know. So we started a study that every patient who comes to the emergency, even at 2 a.m. in the morning, just do an ERCP that time, because we didn't have ultrasound. Ultrasound was not available anywhere in India except Bombay. And we said we do an ERCP, and I've done ERCPs even at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and during daytime. We knew what was going on. There was a worm which was in the duodenum, which was getting into the bile duct and causing intensive pain and coming back. And by the time another 1 hour, there was nothing in the bile duct. So we found out of 108 patients, we did ERCPs, 40 had worms in the bile duct. Remarkable. So we got this disease called biliary ascariasis, and then we got it renamed as hepatobiliary and pancreatic ascariasis, a major problem in this community. Now, the issue was the general physician could not do ERCP to diagnose it. So we had to do an ultrasound. So we were the first to get an ultrasound in GI, probably the second in India. And I had to go to Bombay to get somebody to really train us on ultrasound. It was a big story. But anyhow, we could pick up the ultrasound diagnosis of biliary ascariasis, which anybody can do in the community, and deworm. And so we have had the impact of this disease is that once worms get on the bile duct, and if they get trapped, they die, they form stones, they form what we call as hepatolithasis, not the gallstones. And about 15% of the gallstone disease is related to worms which are dying in the bile duct, and majority of them who have hepatolithasis are related to disease. A very, very interesting, very, very intriguing disease, which is only so prevalent in Kashmir. And now with this ultrasound making a diagnosis and picking up the worms, you can, and even in the bile duct and pancreatic duct, you can treat them. And I think the impact of the disease is coming down, because now ultrasound is anywhere in Kashmir. There are already 500 ultrasounds in Srinagar only, and all over the valley. And they're good radiologists. They pick the worms. And earlier we didn't know how to pick it up. And we did some very intensive study to really show that what are the appearance of worms in the bile duct. ERCP is needed only in very selective patients, and now surgery rarely needed. So this is a remarkable manifestation of a disease in a place which has unique features. That worm, everybody has a worm in the intestine. It goes to the duodenum, travels and gets in the bile duct and packing duct. We have another manifestation of it. It can get into the pylorus, causing pyloric obstruction. It can get into the esophagus, causing a recombinant choking. Remarkable manifestation of worms in this community. And I think the impact is coming down because we know the disease now.
Thank you, Kurusab. I have already gotten lots of messages. There are many who want follow-on sessions with you individually, and we will come back to you on that. I'm going to go to now questions from the audience. Khalid, over to you. You had a question for Nargis, please, if you can keep it short.
Thank you, Aldaf Sab. Kuru Sab, great to see you. Zargar Sab, great to see you as well. Kaul Sab, both Upinder Kaul and Pervez Kaul. We look up to you, and where we are, it's mostly because of you as mentors. Dr. Bali, I had a question for you. You mentioned about the gut microbiome, and we all know that its role in disease development and probably down the road in cure of many diseases. It sort of gut microbiome is more sort of a separate sort of disease area where people have not connected it with the rest of the disease. And we know we've done some work on the role of gut and the connection between the gut and the brain axis, and looked at some of the tumors in the brain due to and the connection with the gut. Do you think that there is a need at this point to connect sort of the biology behind gut microbiome with other disease sort of, or with different departments, for example, neurology? If there's a patient who has something in the brain related to anxiety or neurodegenerative diseases, would somebody be looking at the gut, or it's still really far that these are two different disciplines and we won't be connecting them?
Thank you, Mr. Khalid, for your question. As I mentioned, the gut is the genesis of everything.
Yeah.
It has been proved beyond doubt. There are already research papers which have linked the gut microbiome to diseases like diabetes, to diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, to even Alzheimer's. Yes, to be very brief and precise, yes, there is a need, a very critical need to actually delve more into the gut microbiome and to have an interdisciplinary approach wherein we can collaborate with other departments, because obviously without a multidisciplinary approach, you cannot dive deep into an area that is as vast as the physiology and the biology of the gut microbiome is concerned. I would just like to mention here that we are already in the process of doing a couple of projects wherein, under the guideship and leadership of the current director of the Sher-e-Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, Dr. Ashraf Ganai, he's looking into the gut microbiome in goiter patients, in patients with PCOD, and I am sure that with his vision, we can actually have a collaboration of some sort with neurology as well. And look, it's absolutely fascinating, you know. And I remember my grandmother used to say that if you have a healthy gut, you have a good mood and everything fits, you know, falls in place. So I couldn't agree more with her. But yes, to answer your question and to be brief and precise, yes, we need to dwell more into this, into the uncharted territories of the gut microbiome. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe allopathic medicine picked it up later than the Hakims in the past.
Yes, maybe they did. But you know, the need for us to actually quantify everything and the need for us to actually scientifically prove everything. So yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Khalid, so we can connect you with Nargis so that you have that conversation. उपेंद्र, एक सवाल आ रहा है कि सर्दियों में हार्ट अटैक ज़्यादा होते हैं. Could you take that question?
Is a known fact. Number one, winter anywhere leads to inactivity. Inactivity leads to having little more food. But heart attack per se would come if there is inflammation in the blood vessel. Because heart attack comes when the artery gets acutely occluded, and that would happen if it ruptures. And that means the inflammation in the vessel wall increases. And for that, I think influenza is one of the things, these chest infections lead to inflammation. If you do HSCRP in these patients, that goes high. So that is one of the important things. And, diabetes, hypertension getting out of control is much more common in winter months. Pollution in some of the cities like Delhi and North India is under a spell of pollution with AQI around 500, 600. That also, these finely particulated materials do not get filtered in the lungs and they reach the blood. And from blood, these inflamed vessels, the inflamed mucosa of the vessels attracts them. And there the platelet activity also increases during winter months. And this is a cascade. But the fact is that winter leads to more heart attacks in prone populations. So one has to be not only wear well, but also have your influenza vaccines, have your physical activity, have your diet, and good heart healthy diet in good quantities. So it's a problem, and it needs a solution in the community.
Thank you so much. Mahi, you have a question for Dr. Zargar on diabetes again and lifestyle. If you could ask that question. Kurusav, I'll come to you.
Honored to be even listening to the whole panel, so thank you. The question was this, even here in US, as the comorbidities for diabetics are severe, however, the rise in the percentage of people who are developing metabolic syndromes is absolutely on the rise. And here, the main cause has been, I think 10, 15 years ago, they detected the use of high fructose corn syrup in everything we eat. So you have to be very conscious about what you're eating, and diet has definitely contributed tremendously to it. I'm just wondering, as Indians are getting more and more influenced by a little more westernized, high-fat, high-sugar diet, do you think there's a correlation between this meteoric rise in diabetes in India and Kashmir particularly, and what people are eating and the lifestyles that are changing? Or are there other inherent factors like genetic susceptibility or environmental factors that are contributing to this massive rise?
Very fundamental question and very important question. Genetics does not change in 30 years. Environment does. We published a paper in Lancet as a global group in 2016, May, which says that if you look at obesity in 1975, India was at position number 19. This would literally mean that France had more obese people than India, and we were at that time also a populous nation. You won't believe me. The paper says Ukraine had more obese people than us in 1975. Today, we have fifth highest number of obese men in the country. And today, after China and the United States, we have the third highest number of obese women in the country. And that's how the diabetes has reached from 11 million to 197 million to 65 million to 101 million, and today and 220 million. One part. The second and the most important part. Enhanced studies in the United States are being done yearly in different disease patterns. In 60s, they realized that coronary artery disease is increasing in the United States. So a program known as cholesterol education program was put in place, which became later ATP1, ATP2. And this tried to educate people, quote unquote, not to get obese. But look at reality, look at data, forget about 1966 when this guideline was issued. To the most intelligent race on planet today, to the most economically evolved and scientifically evolved people today, look at from 2000 and 2006, obesity has doubled up in the United States. The same food that has caused problems there is now getting globalized. And you'll be amazed to know, our group published a paper in Nature in 2019, which says now the same obesity, which was an urban phenomena initially, then became suburban phenomena, now is reaching the rural areas. Imagine now the same epidemic reaching Indian rural area with that 1.5 billion people. That's why we have 222 million diabetics. And it is escalating by 2 in every decade. So yes, absolutely. And the point is, people do not seem to be able to correct their lifestyles. Classical example is United States, where it's worsening every decade. And we seem to be catching up. You have a point. We are not learning our lesson. We need to go back to what Cole Saab was saying, back to that unpolished rice, dal, mung dal, masur dal, gazer. Huh? So mine is not full. So, but it's not happening. This is
Dr. Saab,
it just is not happening.
मेरी डॉक्टर लागबन से बात हो रही थी. He actually wants a session on that particular theme that you Upender just mentioned. We'll do that inshallah. Kuru Saab, over to you.
Thank
You
you.
can then also link it with what Upender was saying. आपके लिए रईस मलिक साहब का सवाल है. In the interest of saving time, I'm going to ask the question. What is the probability of hepatitis C recurring in a patient who was treated for a year and has tested negative? It's a very specific question.
Now, I think the therapeutics in hepatitis C has revolutionized, number one. And that's how we got the Nobel Prize for hepatitis C discovery a few years back. The direct-acting antivirals are remarkable. That if you give a combination of 2 drugs, you eradicate hepatitis C, eradicate, not treat it like hepatitis B. You eradicate hepatitis C in all genotypes, pan-genotypic, in about 95, 96, even 99% cases. But so, and this is just 3 months course, 28, 28, 28 tablets. Anybody now, even a general physician, even a general practitioner does it for hepatitis C, a pan-genotypic drug, and you eradicate hepatitis C nearly in every patient. There's a small group of people who might continue to keep hepatitis C onwards. Now, they have a mutation against a particular drug. And now you have a new class of drugs which is coming for hepatitis C treatment. They're not available in India, but we need to explore that. That small group of people will continue, but I usually treat them for a longer time, for 1 year to 2 years with direct-acting antivirals. Remarkable. People say you don't need vaccine. You can use this form of therapy to really control hepatitis C globally, except that you need to pick up hepatitis C in a population which is a problem. A remarkable feature which has happened in the management of hepatitis C, and that's how, and probably the need for vaccine is being questioned, whether we ever will need a hepatitis C vaccine, which is even not possible at this stage. Dr. Cole was asked about heart attacks. When I was a young physician and in the SMHS hospital, every winter we would wait for subarachnoid hemorrhage and strokes. As soon as winter would come, you would get subarachnoid hemorrhage and strokes. And summer will come and these patients will disappear. This is another phenomenon of heart attacks and strokes which come up in the winter in our population. I think we need to really work more on that. People who are interested, what is the relationship of temperatures as well as many features like heart disease and strokes.
Thank you so much. And the comments that have come to us, many comments, they want to have follow-on sessions, a group of 20 or group of 30, which will deep dive with you on particular spaces. Muzaffar, मैं आपको last सवाल दे रहा हूँ. Since you are part of the core group, I want you to come on camera, please. Muzaffar is an AI expert at IUST. Over to you, Muzaffar.
Assalamualaikum. So nice to hear all of you. My precise question would be that, like, we have some expertise in AI and we have the huge infrastructure and then human expertise as well. And then we have some proof of concept with us as well. So my idea would be, can we work for a single disease, for example, with SICKIMS or with some, where from we will build the science and even take it to the application point of view, to the last, application as well. For example, Nargis talked about microbiota and its connections with the other, health disorders. We have one grant wherein we are looking for the connection between microbiota, gut, and the BC, and gut and the diabetes. So I wish that we collaborate on something wherein we can use, AI for human health.
Thank you. Perhaps a conversation that should happen between Avantipura and Sora. Inshallah, Parvez, Javed, Nargis, all you can facilitate. Khuru Saab, Zargar Saab.
We'd love to be in contact with the expert to see how this works and how we can improve our disease understanding. I think this is something very important because this is coming up fast in clinical medicine now and investigative tool AI.
So with that comment, there are many questions. If you go to the website and read the wonderful papers of these phenomenal people, you'll have answers there. We're going to give you some homework. Read the papers, please. Now towards reaching to the end, we're going to be doing 2 follow-on sessions. हम जो AI और ML पे हमने session किया था, उसका follow-on session होगा. Very specific, targeting now questions of internships, targeting questions of entrepreneurship, कैसे पढ़ाई बच्चों की कहाँ पे कराएं. So that is going to happen on December 6th at 2 p.m. local time. Panelists will be 4 panelists, and we'll distribute information about that. जो हमने पहला session किया था aerospace and space sciences का, that will lead to 3 more sessions with very specific audience and specific panelists. So I will come to you also for follow-on sessions. With that comment, let me now pass over to Khalid, if you're still there. Introduce yourself as we go to the December 27th session on bench to bedside.
Yeah.
Translation.
Thank you, Altaf Sahab. I'm still here.
Please.
It's 1:30 in the morning. I think one of the things that we have been talking about is what goes on in a researcher's mind that actually builds research at a basic level, and how does it actually translate into clinical settings. And there's been quite a bit of talk about innovation and orchestration around that innovation that leads to discoveries that end up in the clinics. So we have an excellent panel of speakers who have expertise in different areas of biology and medicine. And we'll be talking about, the bench research, and then what's the thought process behind the bench research that actually leads to clinical research and ultimately a product in the clinics. It is a 20-year journey. It is not a 100-meter run. It is more than 100 meters, and you need to be patient, and you need to have a vision of how you will see this ending up as a drug in the patient. So I think I gave you a little gist of what we'll be talking about. Maybe Altaf Sahab, is there anything else you would like me to add?
I just wanted to introduce Amir is on the panel of that session. Tanzila is the panelist on this session. Nadeem Saab is also a panelist on the session. There are 2 more panelists, Ayub Qadri Saab and Ijaz Saab on that session. It's going to be a remarkable session. If I could add, there's one person who did what Khalid said, bench to bed, that's MK Ban. He did a rotavirus program from bench to bed. Took about 15 to 20 years. Khalid, you're absolutely right. But that's a remarkable example of how a Kashmiri created the local indigenous rotavirus vaccine. With those comments, I want to thank each one of you again, and people who stayed with us. Students will come back to you with the follow-on sessions so that you could just talk to Hamid Zargar Saab. Let's deep dive into endocrinology. And Hamid Zargar Saab may bring in some of the people with him, but we'll just do endocrine, we'll just do cardiology, we'll just do pulmonology, we'll just do hepatology. microbiology and pediatric, अगर हमारे साथ अभी जावेद साहब जुड़े हुए हैं. So bear with us. We'll come back to you. Towards the end of this session, I want to come back to Yunus. I'll come back to Ahmed, to both of you and other Fazli family members, if they're still with us. A debt of gratitude from everyone that's listening to this session and those that may not be listening to this session. Yunus, if you can show your face. Ahmed, you can show your face. We'll complete this conversation with two of you showing your face and making brief comment.
It's 12:30 a.m. here because I'm in the Central Time Zone.
Okay.
We thank you again for the reverence that you've shown. I'm not somebody basically associated with the medical profession. Families produce many doctors. Unfortunately, I was not one of them. But thank you again, for bringing everybody together, for your kind words. I mean, for this session. Even as somebody who's a layman in the area of like medicine, this has been an extremely informative session for me, especially the comments articulated earlier on diet and how our dietary habits basically are impacting us and impacting our health and causing a profusion of diseases basically that didn't exist before. So very insightful, great work as always, and sincerely appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next 3 sessions are going to be actually related to health sciences, clinical sciences. After that, we're going to have some more beautiful sessions planned. We'll keep you informed. Again, thank you everyone on my behalf, on behalf of the core team of Kashmir Care Foundation, and most importantly, the Fazli family. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.